On this episode, I'm going to be talking about why playing the long game is so important when it comes to getting fat loss results that actually stick for life.
This is the Lifestyle Nutrition Podcast.
Our mission is to help as many people as possible get the information they need to achieve their fat loss goal and be able to keep those results for life. What is going on, everybody? Hope you're having a good week so far. If you're listening to this or watching this, it's probably Wednesday. That's when we put these out. And so hopefully the first 3 days of the week have gone smoothly. I know that this week, as I'm recording it, it's Friday. That's when I record these podcasts. And we got another solo episode for you this week. So Nick's been taking just a break from the podcast. And so you got just me. You got just Alex today. And we got another good one for you today. Before we get into that, though, just a little update on me. Update on my life. Today is day 53 of my 90-day challenge. Still going strong, even though earlier this week, I had some struggles. Monday and Tuesday, I kind of felt myself just starting to fall back into those old patterns, which I'm sure I'm not alone out there. I'm sure there's plenty of people watching this right now that you have at one point or another fell into the old patterns. And it's really easy to allow yourself to slip back into that and to stay there, right? It's so difficult because it's so comfortable. It's just a comfortable place to go back into that. And I caught myself on Tuesday night. And I was like, okay, I'm not doing stuff with intent anymore. I'm starting to check boxes. I'm starting to feel myself like glued to the fucking couch watching Grey's Anatomy. And so I started putting in place some different things. I started putting in place some action items or just like an action plan for some of these things because I felt myself turning to watching 3 to 4 hours of Netflix a night, which I was still getting everything I needed to done. I felt like a few days of that was like not as much intent with it. And that was starting to frustrate me. But I was just, when I start to watch more and more Netflix, I just start to get lazier and lazier. My habits, all of my things around my life, all my habits start to get a little bit lazier. I start to do less and less. And so I put an action plan in there. And this is just, I basically just committed to no more TV until my work's done. And that could be on a Saturday or Sunday where some of my days where I might do a little bit less and just have a little more break. That could mean for me, afternoon. I can, watch Netflix or whatever. But I just realized the more Netflix I watch, the more TV I watch, the more I'm on this fucking phone right here, the more that I just fall into lazy habits. And so I think that's just a huge awareness thing for you all out there, understanding when you're falling into different habits, when you're falling into the old patterns, and starting to put like parameters and starting to put like different actions into place or things into place, limitations into place for you to set yourself up for success. Because we all have different things that we do that pull our confidence down, that pull us off the path of our goal, right? For me, it's Netflix, it's my phone. Those are some of the big things that pull me back from where I want to be. And so setting parameters around those things and having just guidelines for how we're going to go about our life and go about our goals is huge. And so I just would challenge you all this week, figure out, is there anything in your life that you have that you're doing a lot of that's pulling your confidence down, or that like you, like me, I'm sure I'm not the only one out there who literally has habits where it's like, oh, if I sit and watch TV too much, like it starts to flow into every other area of my life. That's me. And I just I pushed past it too long to the point of like, okay, it kept getting more and more. And then it got to the point where it's like, I'm watching it when I eat all the time, and kind of any little break in the day, I'm watching some Grey's Anatomy, and I just needed to cut it off. And so now the last 3 days, I have made sure that I'm done with my work before I start watching any Grey's Anatomy. I've cut it down to about an hour, and I'm reading more, feeling good, in a better headspace. And another thing, this is kind of crazy. So like everybody talks about, this is kind of in like the personal development space. A lot of people talk about life happening for you instead of to you. And I'll be completely honest, I thought I understood what this meant for a long time, but I didn't until like this morning when I heard it and it clicked with me, right? It clicked with me because I was like, oh yeah, for you, not to you. Like I understood like not reacting, right? But I didn't understand. It's like, okay, if I change my mindset to this, that's basically like having faith that whatever's happening is happening for a reason. And I think that is awesome. And I can't believe it took me this long, this long to figure it out, because it's absolutely crazy. Sometimes, like, sometimes up here, I can think I'm smart, but there's like just some things where it's like I can be really gullible, and I can also just like, it can sometimes take me a little bit of a while to figure out what's going on in situations. And so I'm working on it, but I thought that was awesome. Like, having faith in what is actually happening is happening for you instead of to you. You're not always reacting. And also what I thought was like, that allows you to think of problems as opportunities, right? Like, okay, this is supposed to happen. I'm supposed to solve this problem. I'm supposed to have watched 4 hours of Netflix a day for the last week and figured out that, oh, that's not really what I want to do, right? And now I can solve this problem. And so I think it shifts problems, it shifts struggles into more of that actual solving side of things, as opposed to the side of things where, oh, I can't believe this happened to me again, and just kind of falling into the victim mentality. I think thinking that things happen and are there like there's unfortunate shit that happens to all of us, right? There's always going to be stuff that happens to us that just sucks, right? And it's out of our control, and it's like, fuck, right? But if you have the mindset of that, like, this is supposed to happen, then maybe you can shift and you can just find problems and solve problems, as opposed to just letting shit happen and just kind of sitting there like, poor me, like, I feel bad for myself, and I have such a bad, like, it's just such a bad situation going on over here. That doesn't really help you move forward, right? We want to be in the problem solving mentality. And I can't believe that I just figured this out. But it was a cool little just realization for me today. This morning I was listening to a podcast. But let's get into it. You've heard me ramble along for too long today. Hopefully you've got some good insight, though. I like to do that on these solo episodes. I know on the regular episodes, we're kind of, Nick and I are bullshitting. On these solo episodes, I've just kind of like to bring you inside the brain of Alex, what I'm thinking, maybe some different things that have happened in my life recently that you can get a lesson from, because I have had a lot of stupid shit happen, and I've also had a lot of rough scenarios happen when it comes to fat loss, when it comes to health, and different things I've gone through. And that's why I do this. That's why I coach. That's why I try to help people. That's why my mission in the podcast mission is to help everybody out there. First off, I kind of want to just be able to, or I want to be able to change the way that people look at fat loss, right? And this episode plays really big into that. I also want to help increase the percentage of people that actually keep their fucking results. It's way too low. And I'll talk about it all the time, because we're going to relate every episode back to that. And that is why today I'm talking about the long game. The long game. And you might be asking, like, what is the long game, right? And what I think of the long game as is, it's like being in it for long-term results. Making decisions based on what is going to most benefit your future self, right? There's a lot of scenarios out there. I used to be in it for the short term for like fucking 4 years, right? I talked about this. I tried every quick fix, tons of fat diets, Googled how can I lose fat as quick as possible? What are the best foods for fat loss? What are the best supplements for fat loss? It's all of these different things, right? That I'm sure plenty of you out there have done. Maybe you're doing them right now. But the thing about that is that short-term stuff generally gets you into a worse place. At least it did for me. It got me into a worse place with my sleep. It got me into lower energy levels. It got me into a place where my body wasn't recovering, because I was doing all these drastic things. I was doing things thinking about how can I get to my result the quickest, as opposed to what's going to benefit me the most and what's going to lead me to getting the best long-term results, right? What would the happiest, most successful version of myself do in this situation? If you kind of shift your mindset and think about it that way, what would the happiest, most successful version of myself do in this situation? You're thinking on the long term, right? You're thinking for this person, like, oh, how would I make the decision if I was focused on 5 years down the road? And then that changes things a little bit because you're not going to do the thing that's going to get the most immediate gratification, this quick fix mentality. Oh, I'm going to bring my calories super low. Oh, I'm going to fast for 3 days. Oh, I'm going to, do all of these fad diets that restrict all my favorite foods. You're not going to do that, right? And understanding that this long game, it's all about understanding that the results that actually stick take time to achieve. You generally don't get out of shape overnight, right? It wasn't a snap of a finger that you gained 50 pounds. At least I would fucking assume it wasn't. If it was, then you probably should make sure that you're getting that checked. It's probably something more serious, right? And so understanding that you didn't get out of shape overnight, you're not going to get back into shape overnight. And if you do, you're not going to stay there. And that's why you see 95% of these people who get these, lose a lot of weight very quickly, put the weight back on. That's why you see it. That's why there's plenty of studies out there that show that if you go about weight loss, if you go about fat loss in a way that is completely different from how you actually live, how your lifestyle actually is, how you actually plan on going about it in the future, that you're not going to be able to keep those results, or that a very small percentage of people do. And this is super important. And basically what I'm going to walk through on this episode is just like different tips. So I wanted to understand what's the long game, right? But now I'm going to give you tips on different scenarios, different areas, goals, food and exercise, habits, stuff like that. How can we best set up ourselves to play the long game? And when it comes to goals, what I recommend is setting a big outcome goal and detaching from that outcome goal and focusing on the daily goals, the daily actions. So many people, and generally why we try all these quick fixes, why we try all these drastic diets, drastic methods, stuff like that, is because we're so focused on that end goal. We're so focused on that 50 pounds, that 100 pounds that we want to lose. And that makes us do drastic things. We're not focused on the things that are actually going to get us to our goal. We can't control how quickly we lose that weight. Right? We can't, in a sense, we can control some of it, right? Like I can control if I bring my calories down to nothing, you're probably going to fucking lose weight, right? At least for a while. But also you're neglecting all of the other health things that are happening to you, all the other struggles that you're getting into. You're probably, like I said, you're probably putting a lot more stress on your body than needs to happen. Stress is like the number one reason why people have these diseases out there, why obesity is at the worst that it ever has been. And so you're neglecting your stress, you're neglecting your sleep, you're neglecting your energy levels, you're neglecting your hormones, you're neglecting all of these different things that are going on inside you. So you're getting into a worse place there, which makes it a lot harder to keep the results, right? And so detach from that outcome goal. When you're focused on the outcome goal, you're focused on short-term results. You're also really focused on the scale. And I don't think I've done an episode on the scale, but we will have that sometime soon here. When you're super focused on the scale, you live and die by it. Your mood is just determined by the scale. I have been there. I've had scale anxiety. I've had struggles with the scale for a long time. And literally it was terrible because I'd step on, I'd think it was going to be some sort of number that was going to pop up there. It was different than what I thought it was, and that would ruin my day. And it would generally lead me to doing crazy shit, right? If it was like, oh, that's higher than I thought it was by 2 pounds, I would do crazy shit. And so focusing on the big outcome goal, we're focusing on short-term things. We're focusing on the scale. We're focusing on things that are outside of our control. When we focus on our daily actions, we are focusing on the long term because we're actually focusing on the things that are in our control and the things that will lead us to that goal. We can only do so much, right? And you see this a lot where people will try to do so many damn things. They'll try to have like 10 different habits that they're changing at once. And maybe they can do it for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, but they always end up falling off because it's too much. You can't stick with it. You're relying so heavily on willpower and you're neglecting the fact that we're all going to go through these phases where we don't want to do shit. Right? Where we don't want to do shit. And when we go through these phases where we don't want to do shit, we can't have this laundry list of stuff that we already committed to because we're probably not going to get it all done. And I'll talk about that later, but we got to simplify. And that allows you, and when you focus on those 2 to 3 daily actions that you're working on, and really how you can develop these is just by figuring out what your struggles are, right? Like what are things that are really big struggles for you? Is it sleep, stress, Is it, struggles with emotional eating or binge eating? Things like this will help you to figure out exactly what needs to happen, right? Like, what are my daily actions? Oh, I struggle with water. Like, let's make a water goal one of your daily actions. Oh, you know what? I kind of sit on my ass all day. I don't really move much. All right, let's make a step goal your daily action, and having these things that are actually going to lead you to your goal instead of focusing and obsessing over that goal itself. And then another thing on goals is having a super deep, clear why. You want to have something that's really driving you. And what I've found that can be super beneficial is to make sure it's outside of yourself. When we have goals that are just really attached to us, and it's like a goal of, I want to just be the best version of myself or whatever, which is a great goal, right? But like generally when we have goals that are just like, I want to feel the best ever, like I just want to feel so good, and those things, you can't drive yourself when it's really hard, right? Like you're going to struggle when those hard weeks come, when those hard days come, when those hard months come, where motivation's a little bit lower, when you're in a different emotional state. It gets a lot harder in those times. And so having a deep why, attaching it to other people, I would recommend, if you set like a big outcome goal, or if you set goals, put somebody, how is that going to affect somebody else? Like I got this from Nick Ross. He's amazing. He has podcast Circle the W, which is awesome. And he talks about when you're setting your goals, put next to those goals somebody who you achieving that goal impact, and how it's going to impact that person. And a lot of times what we see is, you see moms, like they want to lose 50 pounds, and it's because, like I've realized that if I keep going down this road, that I'm not going to be here much longer. And I have these, I have my kids. I want to be able to play with my kids. I want to be able to be here as long for my kids. I want to set a good example for my kids. Those are amazing, deep whys. Remind yourself of that daily, right? I like to put one on my phone. I literally have on my phone every day, I get a reminder about my why. Every morning at 7 a.m. sharp, my why reminder comes, and I read it every day. I also read my mission every day. I remind myself of these things because I know that my motivation is not always going to be up here. I know that I'm going to have days where I'm down. I had 2 of them earlier this week where I was down and I was not feeling good. Motivation was low. Emotionally wasn't in a great spot. And I pushed through. I still did stuff. And like I said, I realized a few things in those days. I realized I was starting to check boxes. I realized I was falling into old patterns, and I was able to change it. But I wouldn't be able to keep pushing forward if I didn't remind myself of why I was doing this in the first place. So remind yourself every day of that why, and make sure it's deep. That's going to be huge for being able to keep going and to be able to focus on the long-term thing, why we're actually in this. That's so big when we have something that's huge and it's beyond ourselves. It makes it so much easier to keep going and to just like focus on these small wins throughout. And if you're enjoying this episode, make sure you like, subscribe, and share it with a friend. It really helps us to grow. And then when it comes to food and exercise, some things you can do to focus on the long game. 80-20 rule when it comes to food. I don't know if I've talked about this. I'm sure I have on the podcast. I talk about it all the time. 80-20 rule is 80% nutritious whole foods and 20% not as nutritious foods. And so, whole foods are like your meats, poultry, eggs, unprocessed dairy, fruits, veggies, nuts, seeds, stuff like that are going to fall into our whole foods. And these are foods that are generally, like I said, they're very nutritious. They're going to have a lot of micronutrients in them. And they're going to help us just get into a better place, right? They're going to help us feel better. They're going to help us sleep better. They're going to help us have more energy. Some of these things that people lack, right? And then we have the 20% not as nutritious foods. And these are or your fun foods, I like to call them. These are like your ice cream, your pizza, your cookies, your sweets, your pasta, your whatever, right? All of these different foods that we love. And why this is so important for the long game is because when you restrict your foods, you're thinking in the short term, right? Because I don't think a lot of us, at least I'd hope not, a lot of us don't expect to just not ever eat fucking pizza again, or not ever eat your insert favorite food, right? Like whatever your favorite food is, do you plan on not eating that forever? Well, then don't go about fat loss not eating that food. Include it in your week. I always include, now right now I'm doing my mental 90-day challenge. And so I don't have my sweets or my baked goods, but that is the mental challenge that I'm doing. Right after I'm done with this, I'm going to start eating my fucking ice cream again. I don't recommend doing that, but this helps us be more consistent, right? We're not going to always be falling off. Or we're going to be thinking in the long term, because the best way to go about fat loss is always going to be the way that you plan on eating once you've achieved your goal. Eat in small calorie deficits. Another thing, eating in small calorie deficits, not going into these deep fucking 1,000, 1,200, 1,300 calorie deficits that a lot of people try to do and pare down a ton of muscle, right? Like, you're losing muscle when you do this, because when we lose weight, fact here, that a lot of people don't understand, we're losing water, fat, and muscle. All three of those things. The larger the calorie deficit, the more muscle that we're losing throughout that. And muscle is the most precious tissue that we have. You have a lot easier time losing muscle than you do to put it on. It's a lot harder to put muscle on. And muscle is going to help increase your metabolism. It's going to help you be able to eat more calories. The lower muscle that you have, so the more muscle you pare down, the harder it's going to be to keep your results, because you're going to have to do it on a lot less calories. And so eat in these small calorie deficits, 300, 500 calorie deficits. It's going to help you preserve that muscle throughout the process. It's also going to help you be more consistent throughout the process, which is the goal, right? If we are doing things that allow us to be consistent, we're playing the long game. That's what we want to do. We want to be as consistent week after week. We don't want to get into this yo-yo dieting cycle where we're constantly falling off and restarting and falling off and restarting. That is short-term thinking. And that is one step forward, 2 steps back, 1 step forward, 2 steps back. And you're also getting yourself into a worse and worse place throughout that, mentally and physically. Another thing, when it comes to food and exercise, don't diet all year round, right? Spend time at maintenance. Spend time trying to build muscle. Spend time away from the calorie deficit. So many people all year round, 12 months out of the year, trying to lose fat. And they're in the same exact spot that they were in before, because they're putting so much stress on their bodies all year round, and they're constantly going lower. They're constantly moving more and decreasing their calories. And over time, our bodies just shut down, right? They're like, I don't have enough food coming in. I'm so stressed. And they're just going to start to pile on the body fat, right? They're going to start to hold on to body fat to help keep us safe, because it's sensing this threat. Cortisol is being released. All of these things are happening. And so make sure that you're spending time at maintenance. Honestly, most of the year should be at maintenance. You should be going into calorie deficits for 16 weeks at a time. 8 to 16 weeks at a time. Go back to maintenance. Allow your body to recover. The recovery aspect is so huge when it comes to fat loss. If our bodies aren't able to recover from the stress that we're putting on it, you're not going to see the results that you want to. It is a super big key. And then when it comes to exercise, right? Enjoy your exercise routine. Do what you enjoy. I think that so many people, you try to do what you think you're supposed to do in the gym. When, I actually changed my mind on this a little while back. I was like, everybody should be doing resistance training. And although I do think that everybody can benefit from resistance training, and it is one of the best forms, if you are not going to be consistent with resistance training, don't fucking do it. Right? Do what you can be consistent with. Do what you enjoy, because if we're going to be consistent with something, we're going to see the best results from that, right? If I'm trying to resistance train and I can only stick with it one time a week because I hate it, I'm going to do a lot better if if I just enjoy running or something like that and I do that 3 to 4 times a week. I'm going to do a lot better that way. Just because at least I'm moving. I'm getting something in. I'm getting some exercise in. I'm getting the benefits, the cardiovascular benefits. And so, do what you enjoy. It's going to allow you to be consistent. Like I said, consistency is the biggest thing to long-term results. It's the biggest thing to the long game. And then also stick to a volume that you can actually stick to every week. If you're trying to do 5 days a week and you can only stick with 3, you're just losing confidence, right? You're just paring down your confidence and lowering your confidence each week, because you're telling yourself, I'm trying to do 5 days a week. And then boom, it's only 3, right? It's only 3 days a week. And then you're like, fuck, I didn't get to 5 this week. Do what you can stick with. If you can just stick with 3, awesome, do that. If you can just stick with 2 days a week, perfect, stick with that. You can always build up from there. Do what you can be consistent with in the gym. That goes for enjoying your routine, and that also goes for the amount that you're actually doing. And lastly, when it comes to the long game and habits, and I've talked a little bit about this before and even through this a little bit, but when it comes to habits, first off, stick with the basics. Don't do anything complicated. It can be easy to see all of these fucking super complicated fat loss plans and fad diets and detoxes and bullshit out there and think that it's a good idea. It's not. It's not. Because when you're doing all this complicated shit, first off, it's super hard to go do anything that's actually fun, to go to any events, to go on vacation, to do all this stuff. You're always off or on the plan. That's the person. It's like, oh, I'm off. And I try to tell people that it doesn't, like, you should never be off the plan, right? Like it's if you're always off or on the plan, you're probably not on the right plan. Because I'll tell you what, all my clients, they're like always on the plan, because I tell them, I'm like, okay, like first off, 80-20 rule, right? Let's just focus on 80% nutritious whole foods, 20% fun foods. And also understanding that, like, just because you had a rough day doesn't mean it was off plan. Like, we're focusing on the week here, people. And that's also another good tip, is focus on the week. Focus on the average. Don't focus on the single day, right? Focus on the habits that day, but also, like, understand that one day doesn't define you, right? One day doesn't define you. It's not going to ruin your progress. Like, you can always get back on it the next day, the next meal. You're 1 second away from getting back on track. It's literally just a mindset change. I'm back on track. And really, that doesn't mean you're off the plan, right? Like, oh, you know what? I swayed a little away for a second. I'm still on the plan, because guess what? My plan allows me to eat what I want to eat, right? Like, that's the cool thing about enjoying foods that you love. But sticking to the basics, that means prioritizing your sleep, stress management, self-care, your hydration, staying hydrated, eating plenty of quality foods. That goes back to the 80-20 rule. Getting daily movement in, having consistent exercise routine, and just calorie control. All of those things are the basics. They're nothing crazy. And I'm not telling you should do all these things at once. I'm saying this is a good thing to help you develop your daily actions, right? We developed our daily actions around the basics. We develop them around the parts of the basics that we're struggling with. Because those things that I just listed there, sleep, stress management, hydration, quality foods, daily movement, consistent exercise routine, and calorie control are all 7 things that first off are huge struggles for a lot of people, and also just they really fall under most things, right? So, like, if you're kind of going through that, like, and you just kind of use it as a checklist, like, oh, I'm going to fix my sleep right now. I'm going to focus on a few actions a day that can fix my sleep. Oh, now I'm going to focus on stress. And I think you'll find with a lot of these, they overlap, right? Like, oh, wow, by fixing my sleep, my stress levels went down a lot. And, when you focus on simple things, and that really goes into my next point, is like, just keep it simple. And that's what the basics allow you to do as well. Keep it simple. 2 to 3 actions a day. Do what you can do, meet yourself where you're at. All of these things, like, build up as you go. You don't need to do this crazy shit. You don't need to do this super complicated stuff. Do what you can do. Do what you can stick to. If you're consistent with something and you commit to doing it day after day over time, you will get to your goal. And you're going to have a lot better time or a lot easier time actually keeping the results if you go about it that way. And lastly, is define your floor habits. So I got this from Chase Smith. He came into my group and did a live training with me a while back, and he talked about finding your floor habits. A lot of us, we think that we need to live up to our best day every day, right? This super ceiling level where it's like, oh, when I do all, everybody knows that you have these days where you're just like, you're fucking on it. You're like, yeah, I did 15 fucking things today and I just killed it, right? And you're like, you feel like the man, you almost like crown yourself a king or queen. And that's just not reality, right? We're not always going to be able to live up to that, even though we think and we kind of measure ourselves that way. Instead of doing that, find the things that you can do on your worst day. What are the 2 to 3 things that you can do on your worst day? Maybe it's going on a walk around the block. Maybe it's drinking, 4 glasses of water. Maybe it's just having 2 servings of veggies. Like, whatever it is that you can stick to on your worst day, find 2 to 3 things and just make sure at least at a bare minimum we get those done, right? That's going to allow us to continue to develop discipline. That's going to allow us to continue to roll the ball forward and continue taking steps in the direction of our goals. That is having the long game in mind. Because if we always try to live up to that ceiling level, we're just going to be frustrated. We're just going to be disappointed. It's impossible, right? We can't do that because we're not always going to be motivated. We're not always going to be in the best state. There's going to be shit that happens. And so if you have 2 to 3 things that you can do no matter what, and you do those things, you will get to your goal. And with that, that's what I got for you today. Hopefully you've gotten some good tips from that. If you haven't yet, please make sure you subscribe, you like, comment, share, rate us a 5-star on Spotify or whatever. Like, we appreciate all of it, and it really helps us grow. We're trying to get our message out there to as many people as possible. Like we've talked about, there's too many people out there who are struggling, and they don't need to be struggling. And so hopefully this episode on the long game can help you start to put in place some habits and different things to think about to help you get away from that quick fix mindset and to start actually focusing on the things that are going to lead you to success forever, right? And keep those results. Because that's how we do the podcast. We want you all to be able to actually go about fat loss in a sustainable way and actually be able to keep those results. And with that, I appreciate you taking the time to listen or watch this on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you're watching or listening to this. We really appreciate you, and we hope you have a good rest of the week.